Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. No matter what time it is where you are, welcome. Let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? And hey, if this story popped up for you, it's because it deserves to be heard. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more like it. The sun beat down on my face as I looked up from the broken fence. 3 years already. 3 years since Helen passed and left me alone on this red earth in Oklahoma. The hot wind carried the scent of the drought that had been dragging on for months, and I felt like there was an even worse drought inside me. My name is John Jack Baptist, 52 years old, hands calloused from working the land, heart heavy with loneliness. Willow Creek Farm used to be a place full of life. Helen planted flowers on the porch, sang while she took care of the chickens, filled the house with laughter and the smell of strong coffee. Now, all that's left is silence. Work has become my only friend. I wake up before the rooster crows, take care of the cattle, fix fences, clear the pasture. When night comes, I sit on the empty porch and stare at the stars. Sometimes I talk to Helen as if she was still here. Woman, this loneliness is killing me, I say softly to the wind. The farm is 10 miles from Tulsa, down a dirt road that turns to mud when it rains and dust when it's sunny. 200 acres of prairie that my dad left me, with a patch of preserved forest that Helen insisted on keeping untouched. It's the lungs of the farm, she used to say, and a place for the animals to rest. Now I take care of the forest thinking of her, like it's a green altar in her memory. That afternoon in March, the heat was brutal. The cracked earth was begging for water, just like my heart was begging for company. The thermometer on the porch read 108 degrees Fahrenheit, and not a cloud in the sky promised relief. I finished fixing the back fence where the steers had forced their way through looking for a better shade. Sweat dripped down my back, sticking the shirt to my body. Every movement was an effort against the heat that rose from the earth like an invisible wave. I decided to take a walk to the creek, see if there was still water flowing. In the last years of the drought, the creek had become just a trickle, but it was still the only place where the animals could drink. I mounted Thunder, my bay horse, who's been with me for 10 years. A smart animal, the son of a mare that Helen adored. Thunder knows every stone on this land, every trail, every twisted tree on the prairie. When Helen died, he got sad too, as if he understood that something important had left our lives. The red dirt road stretched out in front of me, dusty and hot. On both sides, the dried-up grass waited for the rain that stubbornly refused to come. Dry berries, shriveled plums, golden grass that crackled under Thunder's hooves. The buzzing of cicadas was the only sound that broke the heavy silence of the afternoon, a persistent chorus that seemed to scream against the dryness of the world. Thunder walked slowly, his hooves raising clouds of dust that stuck to my sweat. We stopped a few times in the thin shade of the cottonwood trees to rest. The horse snorted, shaking his head to chase away the flies that insisted on landing on his eyes. It was when we got close to the old bridge over the creek that everything changed. The bridge is a relic from my grandpa's time, made of oak wood that has stood for over 50 years. Helen liked to come here in the late afternoon, said it was the most beautiful place on the farm. I had avoided passing by here since she died. Thunder stopped suddenly, his ears perked up, his body as tense as a violin string. I've known my horse for a long time. When he gets like this, it's because something isn't right. Animals sense things that we don't see, especially Thunder, who has always been too smart for a regular horse. "What is it, Thunder?" I murmured, running my hand over his neck. The animal shook his head and took a step back. His ears moved back and forth, picking up sounds that I couldn't hear. His eyes were fixed in the direction of the creek, alert like a hunting dog that had sniffed out prey. I got off the saddle and approached the bank, straining my eyes through the branches of the trees. The sun was low, creating long shadows that danced on the water. Vines hung from the branches like green curtains, and the smell of damp mud rose from the creek bed. But there was something else, something that shouldn't be there. A low groan reached my ears. Weak, almost swallowed by the sound of the flowing water that still insisted on running over the smooth stones. My heart raced. In 3 years of solitude, I had gotten used to all the sounds of the farm, the mooing of the cattle, the chirping of the birds, the creaking of the dry branches. That sound was different. It was human. I pushed the branches carefully and looked closer. The leaves scratched my arms, leaving small cuts that I didn't even feel. Adrenaline had taken over my body. There she was, a young woman, in her early 20s, half sunken in the shallow water near the bank, soaked clothes clinging to her thin body, dark hair spread out like seaweed, a simple blue cotton dress that had seen better days. She was conscious, but didn't seem to have the strength to move. Her arms moved slowly in the water, as if she was trying to swim, but without being able to coordinate her movements. Her head swayed from side to side, and even from a distance I could see that something was very wrong. "My God," I whispered. I ran to the edge of the water, my heart beating unevenly. The woman saw me coming and tried to speak, but only a low groan came out. Her eyes were big, dark, full of fear and a sadness that I had never seen before. They were the eyes of someone who had gone through things that no one should go through. I stepped into the water without thinking. The creek was cold, a stark contrast to the heat of the afternoon. The current wasn't strong there, but the woman seemed too weak to fight against it. Her clothes weighed her down, pulling her down like anchors. "Easy, miss," I said, holding out my hand. "I'm here to help you." She looked at me for a time that seemed eternal. I saw distrust in her eyes, as if she expected me to be just another person who was going to hurt her. But I also saw hope. A small spark, but one that shone brightly in the midst of so much fear. Slowly, she held out her trembling hand towards me. Her fingers were thin, cold, and trembled like a leaf in the wind. Her skin was wrinkled from so much time in the water, and there were strange marks on her wrists, purple marks that looked like they were from rope or handcuffs. When our fingers touched, I felt that something bigger than both of us was happening on that hot afternoon in March. A connection that I couldn't explain, as if destiny had plotted that encounter. I pulled her carefully to the bank, my arms holding her fragile body against my chest. She weighed almost nothing, like an injured bird. Her breathing was rapid, panting, and I felt her heart beating fast against my ribs. When I laid her on the grass on the bank, under the shade of an old oak tree, I saw that she was pregnant. Her belly, small, about 5 or 6 months, moved slowly with her breathing. Her hands moved instinctively to protect her belly, even unconscious. "What's your name?" I asked, taking off my shirt to cover her shoulders. "Mary," she answered in a weak voice, almost a whisper. "Mary Gloria." The name came out of her mouth like a prayer. Mary Gloria. A pretty name for a woman who seemed to have lost all the glory in her life. "And you? What's your name?" she asked, trying to sit up. "Jack. John Jack Baptist. This is my farm." Mary looked around, as if she was trying to understand where she was and how she had gotten there. Her eyes stopped on Thunder, who was watching us from a distance, still alert. I was walking," she said, her voice gaining a little strength. "Walking all night. When I saw the water, I thought about going in and never coming out." Her words chilled my blood. I knew right away what she was saying. A pregnant woman, alone, desperate enough to consider the unthinkable. "What happened to you?" I asked carefully. Mary lowered her eyes, her hands squeezing the hem of her wet dress. "It's a long story," she murmured. "I've got time," I replied, "and it looks like you need help." She looked at me again, studying my face as if she was trying to decide if she could trust me. She must have been used to men who hurt, who lied, who promised help, but only brought pain. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said finally. "Honey, you almost drowned in my creek. You're pregnant, wet, shivering with cold even with this heat. If that's not my problem, then I don't know what is." A small smile appeared on her face, the first one I'd seen since I found her. "Thank you," she whispered. And so it was, on that afternoon of strong sun and dry earth, that my life changed forever. I didn't know it yet, but that woman I pulled out of the water was going to teach me that even in the driest heart, a new hope can sprout. I helped Mary to get up, and we walked slowly to where Thunder was waiting. The horse looked at her with curiosity, without showing the nervousness he usually had with strangers. It was as if he knew that she needed care. "Can you ride?" I asked. "I think so," she replied, but her legs were trembling. I helped her up on the saddle, taking care with her belly. I mounted behind, holding the reins with one hand and her with the other. The smell of her wet hair, mixed with the perfume of the wildflowers, created a strange, melancholic fragrance. The way back home was silent. Mary leaned against my chest, exhausted, and I felt the weight of the responsibility that I had just accepted. I didn't know anything about that woman, but I knew that I couldn't let her go away in that state. When Willow Creek Farm appeared on the curve of the road, with its white fences and the simple red-tiled house, Mary sighed. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "My late wife used to say the same thing," I replied, surprised to be able to talk about Helen without feeling the usual pain. "Did she die a long time ago?" 3 years. Cancer. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." It was the first time in 3 years that I had talked about Helen's death with a stranger, and for some reason, it didn't hurt as much as I expected. Mary Gloria couldn't walk straight. Her legs trembled like green branches, and with every step she leaned more on my arm. The walk from the creek bank to where Thunder was waiting had been short, but even so she was panting, as if she had run miles. I pulled Thunder close to the porch and helped her down from the saddle. Her hands clung to my shoulder with a desperate strength, as if I were the only solid thing in a world that was collapsing. "Where were you going?" I asked as we walked slowly to the porch. She was silent for a while, only the sound of Thunder's hooves on the ground and the dry wind in the dry branches. Rex, my mutt, came running from the shade of the mango tree, barking with joy at seeing movement on the farm. But when he saw Mary, he stopped in the middle of the road, tilting his head as if he was studying her. "Don't worry," I said. "Rex barks a lot, but he doesn't hurt anyone. He's more scared than brave." As if he understood that he was being introduced, Rex approached slowly, sniffing the air. Mary held out her hand, and he licked her fingers gently. "He's beautiful," she said, stroking the dog's head. "It's been a long time since I've seen such a well-cared-for animal." When she finally spoke about her destination, her voice came out low, almost swallowed by the wind. "I don't know. I just wanted to disappear. I didn't insist." I had seen enough hurt people to know that some wounds need time to open. And from her eyes, from the purple marks on her neck that she was trying to hide with her hair, I knew that this woman carried deep wounds. We arrived at the porch, when the sun was already saying goodbye behind the hills. The house was, as always, quiet, empty, waiting for someone who would never come back. The same heavy silence that had accompanied me for 3 years, but which now seemed different with Mary's presence. "Sit here," I said, pulling the wooden chair that Helen used to peel cassava on Sunday afternoons. "I'll get some water and something for you to eat." Mary sat down slowly, her hands protecting her belly. She looked at everything carefully, the wilted flowers in the vase on the porch, the old hammock hanging between 2 columns, the battery-powered radio that I sometimes turned on to listen to the news from Oklahoma City. "Your house is cozy," she said when I came back. I brought a glass of cold water from the fridge and a plate of chicken and rice that was left over from lunch. It wasn't much, but it was what I had. "Thank you," she said when I put the plate in her hand. She ate slowly, as if every bite hurt, or as if she hadn't eaten a decent meal in a long time. I stood there by her side, not really knowing what to say. It had been so long since I had company at the table that I even forgot how to talk to people. Between one bite and another, Mary looked at the horizon where the sun painted the sky orange and red. The cicadas had stopped singing, giving way to the chorus of crickets that announced the night. It was a changing of the guard that happened every afternoon, but that I rarely stopped to notice. "How long have you been living alone here?" she asked. "Since Helen died. Before that, we had a daughter too, but she got married and went to live in Oklahoma City. She visits from time to time, but it's not the same thing," Mary completed. "No, it's not." She nodded, as if she understood perfectly what it was like to live with someone's absence. "You can stay here tonight," I said when she finished eating. "Tomorrow, we'll see what to do." Mary looked at me with those big, dark eyes. For a moment, I saw in them a gratitude that squeezed my chest. "You don't know me," she said. "How do you know you can trust me? And how do you know you can trust me?" I replied. She gave a small smile, the first I'd seen on her face since I pulled her out of the water. And in that smile, there was a sadness that reminded me of Helen in her last days, when the disease was already winning the battle. "Maybe we have no choice but to trust each other," she said. "I arranged for Mary the room that belonged to my daughter Carmen before she got married and moved to Oklahoma City. A simple little room with an iron bed and a window that overlooked the backyard where Helen planted her flowers. I put clean sheets that smelled of washing powder and fabric softener, left a towel on top of the dresser next to a new bar of soap. "If you need anything during the night, just call," I said before closing the door. "My room is right next door." But I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep well. There was something about that woman's story that I couldn't get out of my head. The marks on her neck, the way she flinched when I got too close, the fear that shone in her eyes even when she tried to smile. I lay down on my bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the night. The hooting of the owl in the oak tree, the sound of crickets, the wind shaking the dry leaves in the backyard. Familiar sounds that normally calmed me, but that night seemed charged with anxiety. Around midnight, I got up and went to the window. The moon was almost full, illuminating the pasture where some cows chewed peacefully. Everything seemed normal, but I had a strange feeling, as if something was about to happen. It was around 2 in the morning that the screaming started. I woke up suddenly, my heart racing. They were muffled screams, as if someone was trying to scream with their mouth covered. I got out of bed and ran to Mary's room, stepping barefoot on the cold floor. The door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly and saw Mary struggling in the sheets, sweaty, her face contorted with terror. Her hands grabbed at the air as if she was trying to defend herself from something invisible. "No, please no," she screamed softly, still asleep. "I didn't do anything wrong, I swear I didn't." I approached slowly and touched her shoulder carefully. Mary, wake up. It's just a dream." Her eyes opened at once, wide, looking for danger in the dark. When she saw me standing there next to the bed, she started to cry, a quiet cry from someone who has cried so much that they have no more tears, but whose body insists on trying. "Sorry," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I dreamed that he was here." "Who?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Mary looked out the window at the darkness outside where the moon created strange shadows in the backyard. It took her a while to answer, as if she was gathering courage to say aloud the name that haunted her. "My husband, ex-husband," she corrected quickly. "Sebastian." The name came out of her mouth as if it were poison. And at that moment, I understood that those marks on her neck hadn't been an accident. Neither were the marks on her wrists, nor the fear that she carried like a shadow. "He hurt you?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mary nodded slowly. A tear ran down her face, shining in the dim light that came in through the window. "For 3 years, said it was because he loved me. That a man who really loves has to correct his woman when she makes a mistake. She stopped, took a deep breath, as if she was preparing to tell the rest. When I found out I was expecting, I thought it would change. I thought he would be happy, that he would stop with the corrections. But he didn't stop. It got worse, much worse. Said that if the child was born and wasn't the way he wanted, it would be my fault, that I had to be perfect to raise a perfect child. I felt anger rising in my chest, an anger from someone who has seen the evil of the world and can't understand how a man can hurt someone he should protect. It was the same anger I felt when the doctors told me that there was nothing more they could do for Helen. "You ran away?" I asked. I tried 3 times, but he always found me. He has friends everywhere, people who saw me at the bus station, at relatives' houses, anywhere I tried to hide. Mary put her hand on her belly in an instinctive protection. The last time, he said that if I tried to leave again, he would kill me, and he would kill the baby too. Her voice broke on the last sentence. I saw that she believed the threat. She knew Sebastian well enough to know that he was capable of fulfilling it. "That's why you were in the creek, running away." She nodded again. "I walked all night. I left Tulsa on foot, down the old road that passes by here. When I saw the water, I thought about going in and never coming out. I thought it would be easier for everyone." She stopped, took a deep breath. "But then I remembered the baby. He's not to blame for anything. I can't do that to him." Mary put both hands on her belly now, as if she was talking directly to the child inside. "When you pulled me out of the water, it was like God had sent an angel," she continued, "someone to remind me that there is still goodness in the world." I sat there in the dark, listening to the wind shaking the trees outside. That woman had gone through hell, and now she was there in my house, afraid of everything and everyone. "You're safe here," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a purpose. "No one will hurt you while you're under my roof." Mary looked at me with those big eyes, wanting to believe, but afraid of being disappointed again. "How can you be so sure?" she asked. "Because I've lost too many people to let someone suffer in front of me," I replied. And it was the purest truth that had come out of my mouth in years. Outside, it started to rain, the first drops of the season, hitting the tin roof like small blessings. The noise grew slowly, from a soft drumming to a stronger and more constant rhythm. Mary turned her face to the window and smiled, a real smile this time. "It's been so long since I've seen rain," she said softly. I smiled too. For the first time since Helen died, I felt that maybe the drought inside me could also end. The rain outside washed away the dust of the world, and maybe it could also wash away the sadness that I had carried for so long. "Do you want me to stay here until you fall asleep again?" I offered. "You don't have to," she said, but her voice didn't sound convincing. "It's no trouble. It's been a while since I've had someone to talk to during a rain." Mary lay down again, pulling the sheet up to her chin. I sat down in the chair next to the bed, listening to the rain on the roof and her breathing calming down little by little. "Jack?" she called softly, almost dozing off. "Yes? Thank you. For everything. You don't have anything to thank me for. Rest now." I stayed there until I was sure she was asleep. Then I went back to my room, but I couldn't sleep anymore. I kept thinking about Mary's story, the courage she had to run away, the fear she carried in her eyes. And I also thought about Sebastian, a man I didn't know but whom I already hated, a man who was capable of threatening a pregnant woman, of torturing someone he should love. I looked at the photo of Helen on the bedside table and murmured, "Woman, I think you sent this woman to me, to remind me that I still have work to do in this life." The rain continued until dawn, and when the sun rose, the world seemed washed, renewed, just like I felt inside. The days that followed were different from all the others since Helen's death. The house had life again. Mary woke up early, even before me, And when I arrived in the kitchen, I already found the coffee ready and the smell of sugar bread that she had learned to make with the recipe that Helen left written down in an old notebook. She had a way with animals. The chickens, who barely let me get close when it was time to collect the eggs, ate corn from the palm of her hand. Thunder, who had always been wary of strangers, let her run her hand over his neck without complaining. Even Rex, my stubborn mutt, had become her best friend. "Have you ever had children?" Mary asked one Thursday morning while I was repairing the corral gate and she was feeding the pigs. The question caught me by surprise. It was early, the sun was still low, and the damp earth from the dew stuck to our boots. "A daughter, Carmen," I replied, without looking up from the wood I was nailing. "She lives in Oklahoma City, has her own family. She visits from time to time." "And does she know I'm here?" I stopped the hammer in the air. It was a question that I had asked myself a few times in recent days. "I haven't called her yet," I admitted. "But Mary, you don't need to worry about that. If anyone asks, you're a distant cousin who came to help on the farm." She nodded, but I saw in her eyes that the concern hadn't passed. Mary carried the world on her back, always expecting something bad to happen. It was as if she had lost the ability to believe that things could work out. "Carmen is a good girl," I continued, returning to hammering the nail into the wood. "When she meets you, she'll like you. She always said that I needed company here on the farm. And you? Do you think you need it?" The question made me stop again. I looked at Mary, who was throwing slop to the pigs. Her hair shone in the morning sun, and her belly was already more apparent under the simple dress that Carmen had brought on her last visit. "I think so," I replied slowly. "I just didn't know it yet." She smiled, and it was a different smile. Less sad, more hopeful. During that week, Mary became integrated into the routine of the farm in a natural way. She helped with the lighter tasks, cooked dishes that I had forgotten the taste of, took care of the garden that Helen had planted and that I had let die of neglect. "Plants feel when we care about them," she said one afternoon, watering the tomato plants that had started to sprout again. "It's the same with people. They need attention to grow." "Helen used to say the same thing," I said, surprised to be able to mention my wife without feeling the usual pain. "She must have been a special woman." She was. Very special. "You still love her very much." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I looked at Mary, who continued to water the plants without looking at me. "I'll always love her," I replied. "But I'm learning that the heart can have room for more than one feeling." This time she looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something that wasn't there before. A different light. As if something was being born between the two of us. It was on Wednesday that the first sign of trouble appeared. I was in the back pasture counting the cattle to see if there were any injured or sick animals. The sun was in the middle of the sky, beating down hard, and the sweat dripped down my back. It was a job I did every week, but that in those days had gained a new meaning. I needed to keep the farm in order to protect Mary. That's when I heard Rex barking like crazy near the house. It wasn't the bark of joy that he made when he saw people he knew coming down the road. It was the bark of alert, of danger, that he only made when something was wrong. I dropped everything and ran back, my heart already racing before I even knew what was happening. The distance from the house to the back pasture was almost a mile, and I ran that distance as if I were a young man of 20. Mary was standing on the porch, her hands grabbing her belly, her face white with fear. On the side of the road, standing under the shade of a buckeye tree that Helen had planted, was a man on a red motorcycle. Even from a distance I could see that he was a big, strong guy, with a beer belly and arms full of tattoos. He was wearing a tank top that showed muscles developed probably in jail, and sunglasses that hid his eyes. He didn't try to enter the property, but he stood there, just looking, like a snake waiting for the right time to strike. "It's him," Mary whispered when I got close, climbing the steps of the porch 2 at a time. "It's Sebastian." My blood ran hot. I went into the house, grabbed the hunting rifle that was behind the kitchen door, and checked to see if it was loaded. 2 bullets. It wasn't much against a man that size, but it had to do. I went back to the porch with the gun in my hand. The man was still there, standing like a stone, but now he had taken off his glasses and I could see his face. It was a hard face, full of small scars, with eyes as cold as those of an alligator. "What do you want here?" I shouted from the porch. Sebastian gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A smile from someone who knew they had power over people, who was used to intimidating and getting what they wanted. "I came to get my wife," he shouted back, his rough voice echoing through the valley. "And the child she carries in her belly." "There's nothing here that belongs to you," I replied, holding firmly onto the rifle. He laughed loudly, an unpleasant sound that scared the little birds from the nearby trees. "Old man, you don't know who you're messing with. Mary is my wife, before God and the law, and no one is going to stop me from taking what's mine." I felt Mary tremble beside me. Her hands were so tightly clenched on the wood of the porch that the knuckles of her fingers had turned white. "Go inside," I murmured to her. "And lock the door." "No," she replied, surprising me. "I'm not going to hide anymore." Mary went down the steps of the porch and walked to the fence that separated our property from the road. Each step of her seemed to cost a huge effort, but she kept her head held high and her shoulders firm. Sebastian got off the motorcycle and approached the other side of the wire. Up close, he was even more intimidating. He must have been about 6.5 feet tall and had muscles that bulged under his shirt. "Mary," he said, changing his tone to something that wanted to seem affectionate but sounded as fake as a tin coin. "Stop this nonsense. You know you love me. You know you belong to me." "I don't belong to anyone," Mary replied, her voice firmer than I expected. "And I don't love someone who hits me." His face changed at once. The mask of a loving man fell off, and what was left was pure anger. The muscles of his neck became tense, the veins popped out in his temples. "You're going to regret this, you wretch," he growled. "I picked you up from the gutter, gave you a house, food, clothes, and this is how you repay me? Running away like a dog in heat." "You gave me a house," Mary replied, "but you also gave me beatings. You gave me food, but you also gave me hunger for affection. You gave me clothes, but you also gave me shame for existing." Her words came out like well-aimed shots. I saw Sebastian squirm with anger, his fists clenching. "And you too, old man," he said, pointing at me. "No one takes a woman from a man and gets away with it. You don't know what you're getting into." "I know exactly what I'm getting into," I replied, coming down from the porch with the rifle pointed at him. "I'm getting into defending a pregnant woman from a coward who hits those who can't defend themselves." Sebastian spat on the ground and got on the motorcycle. "This isn't over," he shouted, starting the engine. "I'll be back, and when I come back, you two are going to pay dearly for this humiliation." The motorcycle sped off, raising a cloud of red dust that took a long time to settle. But before disappearing around the bend in the road, he shouted one last thing. "You're mine, Mary, and you'll continue to be until the day I die." Mary stood there even after the motorcycle disappeared from sight. Her hands were shaking, but her body was upright, strong. When she turned to me, I saw something different in her eyes. Fear was still there, but there was also a new courage. "Sorry," she said. "Sorry for bringing trouble to your house." "You didn't bring trouble," I replied, putting my hand on her shoulder. "The trouble was already here. You just brought a chance to solve it." But I knew Sebastian was going to come back. A man like that doesn't give up easily. And when he came back, things were going to get ugly. That night we stayed up talking in the kitchen until late. Mary told me how she had met Sebastian, how he was different in the beginning, caring and attentive, how his jealousy grew until it became possession, and possession until it became violence. In the beginning, he said he loved me so much that he couldn't stand the idea of losing me, she said, stirring her coffee with a small spoon. Then he started saying that I looked too much at other men, that I talked too much to the neighbors. He forbade one thing, then another, until I couldn't leave the house anymore. And when did the assault start? in the first year of marriage. I had gone to visit my sister without telling him. When I got back, he said that a married woman doesn't leave the house without her husband's permission. He slapped me so I would learn. Mary stopped, looking at the cup as if she was seeing scenes from the past reflected in the coffee. At first, I believed him when he said he was stressed from work, that it wouldn't happen again. But it happened, and it got worse. I talked about Helen, about the longing that gnawed at me inside, about how difficult it was to wake up every day knowing that she was never going to be there again. I talked about the empty farm, about the days that passed without me exchanging a word with anyone, about how I had gotten used to the loneliness to the point of thinking it was normal. Sometimes I think God has forgotten me, Mary said, running her hand over her belly that was already starting to show more. Why does he let so many bad things happen to people who don't deserve it? I don't know, I replied, serving more coffee for both of us. But I know that sometimes God puts people in our path when we need them most. You appeared here on the day that I most needed to remember what life is for. What is it for? She asked. To protect those who can't protect themselves. To give love to those who have never received it, to show that there is always a second chance. Mary smiled, and this time, the smile reached her eyes. For the first time since I found her in the creek, she looked like a real woman, not a shadow fleeing from fear. Have you had many second chances in life? She asked. Some. The biggest was when Helen appeared in my life. I was a bitter, closed-off man who didn't believe in love. She taught me that it was worth trying again. And now? The question hung in the air between us. I looked at Mary, at the way the light from the lamp illuminated her face, at the delicacy of her gestures, even after so much pain suffered. Now I think I'm learning again, I replied. We were silent for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Outside, the crickets sang their nightly symphony, and the wind shook the leaves of the mango tree that Helen had planted in the backyard. Jack, Mary said finally. Yes, thank you for not handing me over to him. I would never do that. How can you be so sure? I thought about the answer for a moment, stirring the coffee that was already cold, because when you truly love someone, you don't hand that person over to someone who is going to hurt them, and I discovered that I can love again in a different way, but still love. Mary looked at me as if she was seeing something new in my face. Are you sure of what you're saying? I am. And you? Are you sure of what you want? I want peace, she answered without hesitation. I want to wake up in the morning without fear. I want my son to grow up knowing what it is to be truly loved. I want a chance to be happy. Then let's fight for it, I said, holding out my hand to her. Mary took my hand and squeezed it. Her hands were small but firm, hands of someone who had learned to be strong in pain. But I knew that the fight was just beginning. Sebastian was going to come back, and when he came back, he was going to bring trouble. What I didn't imagine was that he was going to come back so soon, and bringing company. 3 days later, on Friday morning, I woke up to Rex barking in a way I had never heard before. It wasn't just alert, it was pure panic, the kind of bark that animals make when they sense real, imminent danger. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. 3 motorcycles parked in front of the farm. Sebastian and 2 other men, all big, all with faces of those who weren't there for a friendly chat. One of them was holding an iron bar. The other had something that looked like a revolver tucked into his waistband. "Mary!" I shouted, running to her room. "Wake up, they're back!" She was already awake, sitting on the bed, her hands grabbing the sheets. She had heard the motorcycles arriving and knew what that meant. "How many?" she asked, her voice too calm for someone who was so scared. 3, Sebastian and 2 more. Mary closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, I saw a decision there that scared me. "I'm going to go out," she said, getting out of bed. "I'll go with them. I can't let you get hurt because of me." Don't even think about it, I grabbed her arm. You're not going anywhere with those bastards. Jack, you don't understand. Sebastian is capable of anything. If I don't go, he's going to do something terrible to you. Outside, a voice shouted, Mary, you have 5 minutes to get out of there. If you don't come out, we're going to come in and get you. I grabbed the rifle and checked to see if it was loaded. Only 2 bullets, against 3 men. It wasn't much, but it had to do. Stay in here, I said to Mary, and don't come out for anything, you hear me? For anything. I went out to the porch with the rifle in my hand. The 3 were standing near the gate, smiling as if it was a game. Sebastian took a step forward. Hey there, old-timer. Brought some friends to meet. This here is Carl, he said, pointing to a bald guy full of tattoos who looked like he had come straight from jail. And this is Rat, he indicated the other, thin as a fishing rod, but with eyes of someone who had done a lot of bad things in life. They came to help me get my family. Your family isn't here, I replied, pointing the rifle in their direction. And you're not welcome on my property. Sebastian laughed loudly. Welcome? Old man, we're not asking permission. We're warning you. Mary is going to come out one way or another. Carl hit the iron bar in the palm of his hand, producing a metallic sound that echoed in the morning silence. Rat spat on the ground and adjusted the gun in his waistband, as if he wanted to make sure I had seen it. Look, Sebastian continued, feigning a reasonable tone. You seem like a sensible man. We don't want trouble with you. We just want Mary and the baby she's carrying. It's our right. Right, I shot back, feeling the anger rising in my chest. What right do you have to hit a pregnant woman? The smile disappeared from his face. What happens between husband and wife is none of a stranger's business. You're not married anymore, I retorted. She told me. You separated a long time ago. Paper isn't worth anything, Sebastian growled. She's mine and the child too. Before God, she swore to obey me, and she will obey. That's when the door of the house opened. Mary appeared on the porch, pale but determined. She went down the steps slowly, as if each step weighed a ton. Mary, no, I shouted, but she continued walking until she was by my side. Sebastian, she said, her voice firm, I already told you, I'm not going back, never again. His face contorted with anger. You wretch, you will go back, even if I have to drag you by the hair. He made a move to jump the fence, but stopped when I pointed the rifle directly at his chest. The first one who crosses this fence is going to meet St. Peter personally, I said. For a moment, we all stood there like in a deadly dance. The wind shook the dry leaves of the oak tree. Rex continued barking in the background of the backyard, and the sun beat down hard on our heads. Carl took a step to the side, trying to get a better position. Rat put his hand on the handle of the gun. Sebastian calculated the chances, his eyes fixed on Mary as if she was a trophy that he had lost. That's when the thing that changed everything happened. Mary groaned softly and bent over, holding her belly with both hands. Her breathing became rapid, panting. Oh my God, she whispered. I think the baby is coming. I looked at her, scared. It was still early. According to her calculations, there were almost 3 months left until the birth. But a wet stain was spreading on her skirt, and her face was contorted with pain. Not now, Mary, I murmured. Not now. Sebastian saw the situation and gave a cruel laugh. Look, the baby wants to be born near his father. It's a sign, Mary. Even your own son is telling you to come home. Mary groaned again, louder this time. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Jack, she whispered, I need help. My heart raced. I was alone, with a woman going into premature labor, 3 dangerous men on the other side of the fence, and the nearest town 40 miles away. I need to take her to the hospital, I said, more to myself than to them. You're not taking her anywhere, Sebastian shouted. My son is going to be born here, and then you 2 are coming with me. You can forget about this hospital story. Mary bent over again, groaning in pain. This time it was different. A scream that cut through the air like a knife. I saw blood starting to run down her legs. At that moment, all the threats, all the weapons, all the fear took a back seat. The only thing that mattered was saving Mary and the baby. "I'm going inside with her," I said, holding Mary by the shoulders. "You stay out there as long as you want. But now she needs care." I took Mary back inside the house, leaving Sebastian and the henchman shouting threats outside. I closed the door and leaned a chair against it. "What are we going to do?" Mary asked between contractions, her face wet with sweat and tears. I looked out the window. The three men had settled in the shade of the buckeye tree, as if they were going to wait as long as necessary. "We're going to have this baby," I replied, trying to convey a confidence that I didn't feel. "And then we'll find a way out of this." "Indeed." But looking at the blood on Mary's skirt, at the pain on her face, at the fury of the men outside, I knew that we were entering the most dangerous storm of our lives. I helped Mary to lie down on my bed, the only one in the house that was big enough for her to be comfortable. I got clean towels, warm water, everything that could be useful in a situation like that. "It hurts a lot," she cried, grabbing my hand tightly. "It hurts a lot, and the baby isn't moving anymore." My heart sank. I put my hand on her belly and waited. Nothing, not a kick, not a movement. The silence from inside her belly was haunting. "Maybe he's just resting to be born," I said, trying to calm her and myself. But I knew that something was wrong, very wrong. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. Mary was lying on my bed, groaning with each contraction that came stronger and closer together. I didn't know anything about childbirth, but I knew that something was wrong. Very wrong. The blood didn't stop running, staining the sheets that Helen had embroidered with so much care. Mary was getting weaker and weaker, her face pale as paper, her lips colorless. "Jack," she whispered between one pain and another, "if something happens to me, if I don't make it—" "Don't talk like that," I cut in, passing a wet cloth on her forehead. "You're going to be okay. You're both going to be okay." But the words came out hollow. I was lying to her and to myself. Mary needed a doctor, a hospital, someone who knew what to do. And I was there, a 52-year-old farmer who had never seen a birth in his life, trying to save 2 lives with empty hands. Outside, Sebastian and the others had lit a fire under the buckeye tree. From time to time they shouted something, reminding us that they were still there, waiting. "Hey, old-timer!" Sebastian's voice echoed through the afternoon. "How's my woman? Has my son been born yet?" I didn't answer. I was too busy trying to figure out what to do. Mary held my hand with a strength that didn't seem possible for someone so fragile. "It hurts a lot," she cried. "It hurts a lot, and the baby isn't moving anymore." My heart sank. I put my hand on her belly and waited. Nothing, not a kick, not a movement. The silence from inside her belly was haunting. "Maybe he's just getting ready to be born," I said, but my own voice sounded unconvinced. That's when I had an idea. A crazy, desperate idea, but one that could work. "Mary, can you walk?" I asked. She looked at me with her eyes glazed with pain. "Where to?" "There's a trail in the back of the farm. It leads straight to the house of my neighbor, Tony. He has a pickup truck. He can take us to Tulsa. And them," she pointed with her head toward the window, "they'll be waiting here in the front while we go out through the back." Mary tried to get up, but a strong contraction knocked her back on the bed. She screamed so loud that I'm sure Sebastian heard it outside. "I can't," she sighed. "I don't have the strength." I looked out the window. The sun was already setting, painting the sky red. Sebastian was drinking beer, laughing with the other two, waiting for the night to come to do something. That's when I heard a different noise, car engine coming up the road. I peeked through the curtain and saw a blue pickup truck approaching. My heart skipped a beat of hope. It was Carmen, my daughter. She stopped the car near the men and got out, confused. Sebastian approached her, all smiling, pretending to be a good guy. "Good afternoon, miss," I heard him say with that honeyed voice he used to deceive people. "Are you the daughter of the owner here?" "I am," Carmen replied, suspicious. She inherited her mother's instinct to sense when something was wrong. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, it's just that we're here waiting. Your father is with my wife inside. She's going to have a baby." Carmen looked at the house, then at the three men, and I saw on her face that something wasn't adding up. She knew the farm. She knew that I didn't receive visitors, much less pregnant women. "My dad didn't tell me about any pregnant woman," she said. "It was kind of last minute, you know how it is." Sebastian smiled, but the smile didn't fool anyone who paid attention. Carmen took a few steps towards the house, but Carl moved to block her way. "Better wait out here, little lady," he said, his voice rough. "Childbirth is a delicate thing. You can't have too many people getting in the way." I saw my daughter's face harden. Carmen inherited her mother's stubbornness and my strong temper. When she got angry, she was like a cornered mountain lion. "Get out of the way," she said firmly. "I'm going to talk to my dad." "Nobody's talking to anyone," Rat butted in, putting his hand on the handle of the gun he carried in his waistband. That's when Carmen understood that she wasn't in a normal situation. I saw her back away slowly, her hands shaking, but keeping her head held high. Inside the house, Mary groaned again, a pain that cut through my soul. When I looked at her, I saw that she had fainted. Her breathing was weak, too fast. I made a decision. I grabbed the rifle and opened the front door at once. "Carmen!" I shouted. "Run to the pickup!" My daughter didn't waste time. She ran to the car while I pointed the gun at the three men. Sebastian stood up slowly, his hands in the air, but smiling as if everything was part of a game. "Take it easy, old-timer," he said. "There's no need for all this violence. You have 5 seconds to get on your motorcycles and disappear from here," I said, my finger on the trigger. "And if we don't disappear," Carl asked, holding the iron bar as if it were a baseball bat, "then you'll find out if this rifle works." For a moment that seemed eternal. We all stood still. Carmen inside the pickup with the engine running, the three men calculating the chances, me holding a gun with 2 bullets against 3. It was Sebastian who broke the silence. "All right," he said, raising his hands in a theatrical gesture. "We're leaving, but this isn't over, old man. Nobody gets to keep what's mine." They got on their motorcycles slowly, as if they didn't want to give in. Sebastian was the last to leave, but before going, he shouted, "Mary, I'll be back. You can be sure I'll be back. And when I come back, you'll remember who your master is." The motorcycles disappeared down the dirt road, leaving only the sound of Carmen's pickup engine and the heavy silence of the approaching night. I ran back inside. Mary was awake, but her face was as white as paper. "Carmen?" she asked, confused. "My daughter." She arrived at the right time. Carmen ran into the house, stopped at the bedroom door, and her eyes widened when she saw Mary lying in bed, the sheet stained with blood. "Dad, what's going on?" "I'll explain later," I said, picking Mary up in my arms. She weighed less than a bag of feed, as if the pain had consumed all the substance of her body. "Now I need to take her to the hospital, fast." Carmen didn't ask questions. She opened the back door of the pickup and helped me to settle Mary on the seat. The blood stained the upholstery, but there was no time to worry about that. "Drive as fast as you can," I said to Carmen. "Her life and the baby's life depend on it." The pickup shot off down the dirt road, raising a cloud of red dust. Mary was lying in my lap, her breathing getting weaker and weaker. I held her hand and prayed all the prayers I knew and some that I invented on the spot. "Hang in there, Mary," I whispered in her ear. "Hang in there a little longer." Oh, she opened her eyes and looked at me. In that look there was fear, but also gratitude, and something else, a trust that made me understand that whatever happened, I had done the right thing. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." And she closed her eyes again, while the pickup cut through the night towards the hospital, carrying our hope and our fear towards an uncertain future. The road to Tulsa never seemed so long. Carmen drove as if she was in a race, but even so it seemed that we would never arrive. Mary fainted and woke up, moaning softly at every bump in the road. "How much further?" I shouted to Carmen. "About 10 miles," she shouted back. 10 miles that seemed like 10 hours. When the lights of the city finally appeared on the horizon, I felt a relief that almost made me cry. We were arriving. Everything was going to be all right. It had to be. 2 weeks later, I sat on the porch of Willow Creek Farm with a steaming cup of coffee in my hands. The sun was rising behind the hills, painting the sky pink and gold. The same porch where I spent whole afternoons talking alone with Helen. But now it was different, very different. Mary was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I heard her humming softly a song I didn't know, a soft melody that mixed with the sounds of the morning in the countryside. From the next room came a thin, complaining cry from someone who had just woken up and wanted attention. Miguel. It was the name she chose for the boy. "Like your farm," she said when the doctors said that they were both going to be okay. "Willow Creek protected me, and so did you." The birth was difficult. We arrived at the hospital in Tulsa in the early morning, Mary almost unconscious, Carmen and I desperate. The doctors rushed her to the operating room, left me sitting in a plastic chair in the corridor, praying and waiting for news. They were the longest hours of my life. Carmen stayed by my side the whole time, without asking questions about Mary or about what had happened on the farm. She just held my hand and said that everything was going to be all right, the same thing that I had said to Mary during the trip, but that now I needed to hear from someone. "Dad," she said at one point, "who is this woman to you?" It was a question that I myself didn't know how to answer well. "It's someone who needs help," I said, "and who has helped me too, without knowing." "Do you like her?" "I do. More than I should, maybe." Carmen nodded, as if she understood things that I was still discovering. "Mom wouldn't be angry," she said softly. "She always wanted you to be happy." When the doctor came out of the room early in the morning, his face didn't give anything away. He was a younger man than me, in a white coat and tired eyes of someone who had spent the night working. He stopped in front of me, took off his cap, took a deep breath. "Mr. Baptist?" he asked. "That's me. The mother and the baby are fine. It was close, but we managed. The baby was born premature, but is breathing on his own and the vital signs are normal." My legs buckled. Carmen held my arm, also crying with relief. "It was a high-risk pregnancy," the doctor continued. "The lady suffered recent physical violence. She has old and recent bruises all over her body. The premature birth was caused by the stress and trauma suffered." I felt anger rising in my chest. Even far away, Sebastian had almost killed Mary and her son. "But now they're okay?" I asked. "They are. The baby will stay a few days in the incubator as a precaution, but there is nothing serious. And the mother is recovering well from the surgery. Can I see them?" "In a little while. Mary is still recovering from the anesthesia." When they finally let me into the room, Mary was awake, with Miguel in her arms. He was a small baby, reddish but breathing strongly. His eyes were the same as his mother's, big, dark, clever. "Look," Mary smiled when she saw me, her voice still weak from the anesthesia. "Our warrior has arrived." "Our." The word caught me by surprise, warmed me inside like a sip of whiskey on a cold day. "Do you want to hold him?" she asked. It had been years since I had held a baby, since Carmen was little. But when I put Miguel in my arms, I felt something that I had forgotten existed. Purpose, responsibility, fatherly love. "Hi, little one," I whispered. "Welcome to the world." Miguel opened his little eyes and looked at me. I swear he smiled. Carmen said it was gas, but I know it was a smile. We stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Carmen helped with everything, paperwork, doctors, shopping for the baby. She bought little clothes, diapers, bottles, everything a newborn needs. On the second day, she struck up a conversation with me in the hallway. "Dad, I need to know," she said, as serious as Helen used to get when she had something important to discuss. "Are you in love with her?" The question caught me off guard. I spent some time thinking about the answer, looking through the hallway window at the movement of the city below. "I don't know if it's love," I replied after a while, "but I know it's important. More important than anything I've felt since your mother died." "And her? Does she feel the same way?" "Carmen, Mary has been through hell. Now she has a son to take care of. The last thing she needs is pressure from a man, even if it's with good intentions." "I'm not talking about pressure, Dad. I'm talking about family." "Family," another word that moved me. "Let's take it slow," I said. "See how things unfold." "But Dad," Carmen insisted, "sometimes we lose things by waiting too long. Life already took Mom. Don't let it take this chance too." On the third day, when the doctors released Mary and Miguel, Carmen and I brought the two to the farm. Mary was silent during almost the entire trip, looking through the window, Miguel sleeping in her lap. "Are you scared?" I asked when we got close to home. "A little," she admitted. "What if he comes back?" "If he comes back, we'll deal with it," I replied. "But I don't think he'll be back so soon. A cowardly man like that doesn't like trouble when things get serious." And I was right. 2 weeks passed without a sign of Sebastian. I heard from an acquaintance in Tulsa that he had disappeared from the city, even left debts behind. It seems that he found out that I had a gun license, that Carmen had called the police, that things had gotten too serious for his liking. Or maybe he realized that Mary was no longer the scared woman he knew, that she had found a family that protected her, a place where she could be happy. Now, it was Sunday morning, and I was there on the porch, listening to the sounds of a house full of life. Mary singing, Miguel crying, Rex barking at the chickens. Sounds that I had forgotten how good they were. "Coffee's ready," Mary called from the kitchen. I went in and sat down at the table. She put a plate in front of me. Fried eggs, cheese, sugar bread that she had learned to make with the recipe that Helen had left written down. Miguel was in the makeshift crib that Carmen had brought, moving his little legs in the air and making those noises that babies make when they're happy. "Jack," Mary said, sitting down on the other side of the table. "I need to tell you something." Her tone made me alert, serious, formal, as if it was something important. "Talk." "Yesterday I received a letter from the lawyer. The divorce is final." I felt an enormous relief. She was truly free now, free from Sebastian forever. "That's good news," I said. "It is," she agreed, "but there's something else. I received a job offer in Tulsa at a cleaning company. It's not a big deal, but it's enough to support myself and Miguel." My stomach tightened. She was going to leave. She was going to take Miguel and leave the house empty again. "It's a good opportunity," I managed to say, trying not to let the disappointment show in my voice. "It is," she repeated, but she didn't seem convinced. Only that I don't know if I want to." "Why?" Mary looked out the window, at the pasture where thunder grazed peacefully, at the chickens scratching in the backyard, at the garden that she had revived with so much care. "Because here has become my home. You have become my family." Her words hit me in the chest like a punch. Family. Again that word. "Mary, let me finish," she cut me off, raising her hand. "I know that you still love Helen. I know that you always will. I'm not asking you to forget her or pretend that she didn't exist." She stopped, took a deep breath. "But I'm asking you to consider that maybe life has more to offer. For both of us. For the three of us," she corrected, looking at Miguel. I was silent, stirring my coffee with the spoon. Outside, a mockingbird sang in the buckeye tree, the same mockingbird that Helen loved to hear in the morning. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Sure that this is what you want? A simple life here in the countryside, with an older man, on a small farm?" Mary smiled, the smile that I had learned to love in these weeks. "Jack," I've never had a simple life. I've always had a complicated life, full of fear, full of pain. Simple sounds perfect. I got up from the chair and went to the window. I looked at the red earth, at the blue sky, at the trees that Helen had planted. I felt her presence there, not as a ghost, but as a blessing. "Helen," I murmured softly, "help me know if this is right." And I swear I felt it. A warm breeze that touched my face, a perfume of flower that she always used, a feeling of peace that I hadn't felt in years, as if she was saying that everything was okay, that it was time to live again. I turned to Mary, who was waiting with Miguel in her lap. "Tear up that letter," I said. She smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "Are you sure?" "I am, but with one condition." "Which one?" "Marry me, for real, before God and men, so that nobody ever doubts who you are and where you belong." Miguel chose that moment to give a cry, as if he was approving the idea. Mary laughed, cried, nodded her head. "Yes," she said, "1,000 times yes." And so it was, on a Sunday morning with the smell of coffee and the sound of a child, that I discovered that life always has a second chance for those who have the courage to accept it. The wedding was simple, in the church of Tulsa, with Carmen as bridesmaid, and the priest who had married me and Helen. Mary wore a simple white dress that Carmen bought, and Miguel slept all the time in the bridesmaid's lap. When the priest asked if I accepted Mary as my wife, I looked into her eyes and saw everything I needed to know: love, hope, gratitude, and an immense desire to be happy. "I do," I said, and my voice came out firm, without a doubt. When she said yes, Miguel woke up and gave a shout as if he was celebrating. Everyone laughed, and I felt that Helen was there, happy for us. 6 months later, on a December afternoon, with rain falling gently on the tin roof, I sat on the same porch to write this story. Miguel was crawling through the room, Mary was sewing a little outfit for him, Rex was sleeping in the shade. Willow Creek Farm hasn't changed much on the outside. Same fences, same cattle, same red earth. But on the inside, it's unrecognizable. It has life, it has love, it has a future. Miguel grew strong and smart. He already stands up on his own, babbles words that only Mary understands, and has the most beautiful smile I've ever seen in a child. Carmen comes to visit every weekend, brings gifts for her little brother, and helps Mary with women's things. "Dad," she said to me on one of those visits, "you look 10 years younger." And I felt younger too, as if having a family again had given me strengths that I had forgotten I had. Sometimes when the sun sets behind the hills and silence takes over the valley, I still miss Helen. I always will. But I learned that the heart has room for more than one love, and that saving someone sometimes is the only way to save yourself. Mary taught me that no matter how dry the land of our heart is, it can always rain again. And when it rains, even the driest prairie turns into a garden. There are nights that I wake up and stare at Mary sleeping, Miguel in the crib next to our bed, and I can't believe that this life is mine. After 3 years of solitude, of talking alone on the porch, of feeling that my life had ended along with Helen's. "How did I get so lucky?" I ask softly into the dark. And the answer always comes in the form of a memory. Mary half drowned in the creek, her eyes full of fear and hope, her hand outstretched asking for help. Sometimes we save someone without knowing that we are saving ourselves too. Last night Miguel took his first steps. He crawled out of the crib, leaned on the wall, and walked 3 wobbly steps to my lap. Mary clapped, I held him in the air, and Rex barked with joy. "Look," Mary said, her eyes shining, "our boy is growing. Our boy, our family, our life." When I put Miguel to sleep and went to sit on the porch with Mary, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Regret what?" "Regret taking me out of the water that day." I looked at her, at the face that I learned to love, at the hands that take care of me and our son with so much affection. "Mary," I said, If I knew that taking you out of the water was going to bring so much happiness to my life, I would have dived headfirst into that creek." She laughed, and the sound of her laughter mixed with the song of the crickets and the sound of the rain that was starting to fall outside. Rain. Always rain when something important happens in our life. "I think it's going to be a good harvest this year," she said, looking at the sky. "It will be," I agreed, "in every way." And it was true. The earth was green again, the cattle fat, the house full of life. But mostly, my heart had started beating right again. Sometimes life breaks us only to show that we can still bloom. And sometimes, saving someone is the only way to save ourselves. In the drought of the heart, a rain of hope can always sprout.